Hey guys, welcome to Solo ReacTalk. Today I'm going to be reacting to the ADEPTUS CUSTODES, the Bodyguards of the Emperor of Mankind in Warhammer 40,000 by Voldemort's Guide to Warhammer. Yes, I've already reacted to the introduction to the ADEPTUS CUSTODES. It'll be in the card at the top, as well as other Warhammer 40k videos that I've been reacting to so far. And yeah, this is my favorite faction. This is the faction of all factions. I'm personally saying this. They are the alpha and omegas. Forget about the Primarchs, forget about the Astartes, forget about those people. These are the ones. These are the ones. My favorite faction. Okay. I'll stop now. Let's start. 3, 2, 1, go.
The Custodian Guard. It was a momentous day. One of the rare moments where the pomp of the entire world was directed towards the one event, the one spectacle. A ritual that had gone on for over 10,000 years.
I'm just wondering about the Imperial Palace. I just want to see like a complete image of it. I wonder if I could find that on Google, I'm not sure. But I want to see the complete construction build of this palace. I want to see how it really looks like, you know. Because, I mean, it's amazing. As they were constructing it there with the gold and all these pillars and a giant painted glass structure there, it's just amazing.
Since the very dawn of the Imperium of Mankind. And it was only to be seen on the planet at the very center of the Empire, the birthplace of humanity, once called merely Earth, now known across the entire Milky Way galaxy as Holy Terra. The towering spires reflected the brilliant dawn. The colossal edifices of lost lords, priests, and demigods lined this, one of the...
Doesn't Terra and Earth mean the same thing? I'm not sure, but I think it does, right?
most sacred routes to the Imperial Palace itself, the Avenue of Sacrifice. The one causeway was the venue for the ritual, but it was situated so that most of the urban sprawl around and above it could witness the event. Every window was open, every place filled. Adoring crowds bayed and cheered in their millions to the exaltation of their god, but centered their approbation at those now processing down the causeway's length, all of the way unto the sacred Ascensor's Gate of the Imperial Palace itself. There were 100 couples, each with a male and female. Both wore exquisite finery, attire that could well be the worth of a small moon, for they were of the highest of the high. They were aristocrats so mighty that they were the elect of the Imperium, not just Holy Terra. And in the arms of each woman was a child, swaddled in golden wraps. They were to be the sacrifice, the pledge, the weregeld to their lord, the master of mankind. Each child of these ancient houses would be put through the most rigorous screening and training. Few of them would survive. But those that did, those that managed to thrive in such a regime, they would become the most powerful examples of humanity that have ever been known by the Primarchs themselves. They would become the most trusted and prestigious, the most noble of all of the forces of the Imperium, for they would become custodians, the very bodyguards of the Emperor himself.
You know, I was worried. I was worried when you said these parents would be clothing their children in golden cloths or something, and then they would be going down the pathway to the gates and they would be offering their children as sacrifice. I'm like, what do you mean by that? What kind of sacrifice? And mind you, I mean, this is Warhammer 40k, so I was already thinking terrible things. I thought they were gonna be like blood sacrifices, you know, and stuff like that, horrible things. But no, it's mainly just, you know, to choose who's going to become the next Adeptus Custodes, you know, the bodyguards of the Emperor. You know, it's just like a selection program. You know, the 100 children to be chosen, and they'll be tested. They will be probed and probably given the gene seed of the custodians. I'm not sure if custodians actually use gene seeds. I'm not entirely sure about that, but yeah, this is quite interesting. I really thought that the creation of Astartes was halted because the Emperor is comatose, and I just never thought that, you know, they would be able to produce more custodians. I thought you needed the Emperor and his supervision to create these bodyguards for the Emperor. So yeah, this is actually quite interesting. No, more. I want more.
It had been a trap. None could now refute that. The Knights of Salamnia chapter of Space Marines had been founded some 3 millennia ago. A chapter of Ultramarine stock, they had been rugged and dependable. They did not deviate from the Codex, but nor did they worship it, as many of their pedigree were prone to do. They had received a message that could not be ignored, for it bore the royal seal, the markings of the custodian guards themselves. The astropathic choir confirmed this, well, as far as they could confirm anything in these days. The tear across reality had made communication even less reliable than before. Most messages were ignored.
Wait, astropaths. I thought like you only need one astropath per ship, not an entire choir, you know, relaying messages from another astropath. I thought maybe it was just one astropath to another astropath, not an entire choir of people. I mean, that would create a lot of cacophony of confusion and misinterpretation, you know, because one astropath can say this while the other one is saying another thing, and then the other one behind him is also saying a different thing. So yeah, that would be very confusing.
Because of a lack of interest, but due to a lack of endurance. So few messages could be deciphered these days. So it was that the communication had been received loud and clear, meaning the force and clarity of the choir that sent it could only be of the highest magnitude, hence backing up the communication's contents. The 2 battle barges and half a dozen strike cruiser and support ships were all that was left of the chapter. The vile traitors and their never-born allies had taken a huge toll. They had wiped out 3 other chapters in the region. It was bad. Very bad. So it was with a heady euphoria that the knights went to the location to await important reinforcements from the throne itself. Some even whispered that the Emperor had risen, but they were not hearkened to, not really. That the message came from his guard was odd, it was true, but the knights had always been level-headed, and the whispers were stamped on by the veterans who heard them. Yet when they had been only half a day in location, a tear in the warp opened and vomited out a sizable Chaos War fleet. The Knights of Salamnia were not known for sitting on their thumbs, and they gutted a half-dozen vessels with raking broadsides before they could acclimatize from the translation to real space. But then the battle started in earnest, and it was hotly contested. The Chaos forces had older vessels, but they were all the more vicious due to it, and their fury was remarkable. Not suicidal, but near to it. The onslaught of their boarding pods was the next stage of the conflict. The 2 fleets concentrated on eliminating escorts, while the capital ships became an open battlefield. The traitor marines were hoping to double their fleet in one swift action, They launched everything they had. The pods opened into Loyalist Marines' corridors, and the engagement began. The stolid, robust defences of the Ultramarines against the frantic fury of the warriors of the Long War.
Are these Chaos Marines? Man, I like the helmets. They're so cool. I'm wondering whether these Marines belong to maybe Magnus. I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure exactly, but I think maybe they belong to Magnus.
And experience counted. The Chaos Band, many veterans of the heresy, had the greater experience and skill, the better weaponry, if truth be told, and they were augmented by the power of chaos. The fight was hard, the knights exacting a tally from their foes, but it was going in one direction. At the last, when the ships were all but taken, klaxons rang out again as another force slipped into real space. The knights then stiffened their defences as they were informed. Imperial boarding craft were approaching their ships, but it was the colour, the armour of the vessels that gave way to grins amongst the command staff that remained, for they were gold. All rushed to look down at their screens as the ships landed. Fire burst out from the Chaos scum who had been holding the hangar bays, surrounding the Storm Eagles that had been used to bring over more men once the boarding pods and Terminators had exploded into the Loyalist ships. The fire hit the landing ships, but did a lot less than usual. A lot less. Then the front hatches opened and out they strode. They strode. Huge men, wider, taller, more pronounced than even the Astartes. They were armoured from head to toe in golden auramite. Exquisitely forged. Every single item a work of genius, a labour of love. They wielded long spears, with bolter attachments at the side of the huge blade edge.
Can you imagine this? Oh, this is so good.
While bolter shells smashed into them, they really did more than break their stride, if that. The Custodes acted like Terminators, but moved faster than Mark 6 Corvus armoured Astartes. With blinding speed they advanced, firing into those holding the area and killing first shot, every shot. They knew exactly where to hit their adversaries.
First shot. Not even like multiple shots, no, just one. And that Astartes is dead.
Every weak point, every crack, and they exploited them with efficiency. Within 10 seconds, there was a semicircle of dead traitors, and the Custodian Guard advanced into the ship. On each monitor, the command staff of the Knights of Salamnia grouped as they saw the Guardians fan out. In the corridors they were lethal. Their bolters blazed and decapitated or amputated limbs from all they shot. When they found anyone close enough for melee combat, it was over within a second or less, sometimes much less. Their speed was that of a harlequin, their power that of a demon. They could cut through ceramite warplate like it was smoke, could lift and throw Marines as if they were rag dolls.
Like it was smoke!
They were larger even than Primaris Marines, and their skill was astonishing. Even to those who had fought the Great War, the Long War, the Heresy, the Crusade, even to these broken legends, they could barely follow the movements of the Custodes, let alone stop them. And their auramite great armour seemed proof to all attacks, but this was due to the skill of the wearer, angling its defences to deflect, to dampen each blow on their hardest, almost angled hardpoints. The appearance of Custodes in Terminator armour in the central halls immediately ceased the traitor push. They butchered them like cattle. It was like watching their own Space Marine Terminators walk through farmers or hive scum.
Voldemort is so good, like they butchered them like cattle.
The Custodes were on another level. They were death incarnate. The chapter master blinked, then his eyes widened as he watched the screen. The Custodes had moved into the Loyalist areas, but they did not stop shooting at Marines. Only this time, it was his Marines. Story continued at the end of this entry. Welcome, gentle listener. I am Voldemort, your faithful servant, and I wish to introduce you to the forces, factions, and organizations of the Warhammer 40k universe, the grim darkness of the far future, where there is no time for peace, there is only time for war. And today, we are to discuss the most exalted, the most honored, and most powerful of all of the forces within the Imperium of Mankind. Of course, I can only be speaking of the 10,000, the ADEPTUS CUSTODES, the very guards of the Emperor himself. 10,000 years or more have passed since the creation of this element of the Imperium, and it is said that they were the first of the warriors created by the Emperor when he arose to bring order back to the galaxy through force of arms. They were his most trusted and most potent of all forces, because they had to be. Now some might say that the time of the Custodes is now, that the wars of the setting have never been so dire, so perilous. But let me disavow you of one thing right now, gentle listener. From my reading of the lore, the wars of even this, the end times of Warhammer 40k, are as a painted picture party compared to the trials and horrors of the Unification Wars. For when the Emperor arose, he did so with all of the knowledge he needed. He knew exactly what he would need to do to make his vision, his dream, a reality. And there was no worse place in all of the galaxy as Terra. And the Emperor forged an army to take it. The Great Crusade encountered nearly every form of horror one can imagine, from demons, witches, xenos races that could kill with a flick of the wrist or the merest gaze. The Space Marines fought them and killed them, mostly, but this was as nothing compared to the challenge of reclaiming Terra. For in all of the galaxy there was no place more overburgeoning with psychic entities, demons, cults, genetically enhanced monster armies, cybernetic weapons in their masses, and entire legions of warriors and weapons every bit as dangerous, if not more so, than the vaunted Space Marines. The first battle would inevitably be the worst. The taking of Terra. And the Emperor was under absolutely no illusions of what it would require to be done. For the Emperor had not visited Terra recently, had not been born into the times of strife called Old Night. He was no mere warlord. He was the Emperor of Mankind. An ancient immortal being who had walked the earth and the stars since prehistoric times. He knew the peoples of the world, what they had, what they could create, what they would do, what horrors they could summon or unleash on any who opposed them. And he had been watching this all unfold for millennia uncounted. Often the Emperor had taken on a temporary existence to attempt to guide and steer humanity. He was allied with others of his kind, perpetuals, immortal beings born for reasons unknown, though the Emperor always stated it was for the defense and tuition, the guidance of the greater human race. Yet the Emperor was always the most powerful and influential of his kind, and others bent the knee to his will, or they were crushed, or they simply disappeared and attempted to avoid him, of course. But these rarely survived. So it was that the Emperor had witnessed the progression of humanity through all of its revolutions, agricultural, industrial, space, information expansion, all the way to its apex, the golden age of technology, where enlightenment and wisdom and progress were the guiding lights to humanity, and it could be viewed as truly enlightened. But it was not to last, and the Emperor witnessed the fall, the fracturing of the human hegemony, and its repercussions. He witnessed firsthand with his own eyes the depths to which our kind then fell. How the human race had lost its center, its core, its righteousness, its grace. He then watched on as the vast and potent technologies of the Golden Age could be warped and twisted to things of carnage and slaughter. How genetic knowledge gave birth to mountains of flesh and sinew that wiped out entire armies of non-enhanced warriors. How smells and rites could be used to tear reality asunder and slaughter millions with its warping effects. How exoskeletons and armor could be used to make armies that were practically invulnerable, crushing all but the most twisted warp users into dust. And he knew that the only answer to these deranged weapons of the tyrants, butchers and warlords who ruled over the great swathes of the planet was even greater force, even greater barbarity, an army that could smash anything put before it, be it machine, man or monster.
But wasn't that the Thunder Warriors mainly? Weren't they the main force that fought against all these horrors on Terra? And, the custodians were there as well as maybe backup. Should the Thunder Warriors have a trouble with a particular warlord or a psychic being, then they would call the custodians as their trump card in any situation that they might occur in. Yeah, I'm just wondering about that.
Thus did he make his plans. Thus did he build his armies. And the first beings he made would ever be the greatest of his works, the most loyal of all of his weapons. For many believe he viewed them as just that, tools. But as every craftsman knows, some tools are more precious than others, and in these, his Legio Custodes, his 10,000, he went one step further, for they were not made to be disposable, as were his other forces. Custodes were ever the special ones for a very simple reason. They were not just his tools, not just his weapons. The Custodes were also to be his companions. He would actually know each and every one of them personally, would enter into discourse with them, gain reassurance or even guidance from them, where another perspective were necessary. Each and every one had to not only be the most lethal being ever to set foot on Earth, but also so educated, refined, complex, and intelligent that they could actually engage and entertain the most powerful mind and soul that humanity had ever thrown up.
So, yeah, the Emperor knew more about his custodes than he did about his own children. I'm still hung up about him being a father to his Primarchs and how he hasn't really been there for them when they needed him the most. So yeah, I just find it quite surprising that, he's so well acquainted and he feels very comfortable around the custodians, them being his companions and more than, his tools on the battlefield. So yeah, it's quite interesting. I guess now we know who are the favorite children. I'm calling it out. We know who are the favorite children, and it's not the Primarchs.
The Emperor. And it is for this reason that they are as far above and beyond the Astartes, the Space Marines, as those beings are above the common baseline human. They are each unique as an asset of inestimable value in any theatre whatsoever. They are simply the best there are, or have ever been. Now some may demur and perpetually point to the Primarchs for the pinnacle of humanity, but I cannot agree. To me, the Primarchs are as soiled and far from human as any possessed of the Chaos Legions. They are not and never were human. They are as much creatures of the warp as they are of the materium.
Voldemort, you and me are thinking alike.
So hence, I discount them utterly from this deliberation. And in the future, we shall discuss the nuances of the Primarch project, as far as I read the law. Hopefully not too far in the distance now. The Custodes' origins are now unknown to the general populace of the Imperium, after so long and so many attempts by the Administratum and Inquisition to cloud nearly every facet of the human empire in double talk, misinformation and outright lies. They are mythical beings, despite being present evermore in the current stage of the setting. For now, they fight across the stars as they have not since the Great Crusade. The Unification Wars were terrible, and even included the last recorded battle against Men of Iron in numbers, as far as I'm aware anyway. The Custodes were ever the bodyguard and utter elite of the Emperor, but this should not be viewed as a ceremonial role, not by any stretch of the imagination. For their charge, the Master of Mankind was prone to off-take to the field at crux points. He was no mere general, he was wrath incarnate, and it is his intervention that changed the course of many a battle. And at his side were ever the Legio Custodes, his bodyguards. For they were sculpted individually, as much works of art as weapons of war. They were trained in all disciplines known to man.
Is that a golden lion? Oh my gosh. Yes. Yes. I love it. I love it.
Not merely blood and battle, as the lesser shadow the Marines are. They are unique. For their creation, as usual, let us lean on existing wisdom. To quote, Shadows and Alchemy. It was the Emperor himself that invented the process by which the warriors of the Adeptus Custodes are created. More than 10,000 years later, the same processes are still utilized, remaining every bit as shrouded in secrecy and tradition as they were during the Great Crusade. If it can truly be said that the Space Marines are the sons of the Primarchs, then the Adeptus Custodes are the progeny of the Emperor himself. His might permeates them, his blessings so powerful that they can shield the custodians from hurts both physical and empiric. The greatness of the Master of Mankind runs in their veins, burns in their eyes, and charges the air around them, so that all faithful warriors instinctively respect and fear these demigods of war. The method by which such remarkable individuals are created has always been known only to those of the imperial household, and is carried out by the most accomplished chirurgeons and bioalchemists of Terra within gilded factories locked away from the sight of humanity's masses. With the Adeptus Custodes fighting only for the Emperor himself, and beholden to the commands and scrutiny of no other, the secrets of their recruitment have never been revealed, for not even the High Lords of Terra have the right to demand them. It is known that all
Higher Lords of Terror. I don't think I know them. Are they like the governors of the planet? Higher Lords of Terror. Alright. Let's continue.
custodians begin their lives as the infant sons of the noble houses of Terra. It is a hallmark of incredible prestige to surrender one's child to this most glorious of callings within the Imperium.
Will the child remember where they come from exactly, like, their parents? Will they ever visit their parents? Or yeah, I don't think that will ever happen. I think it's over. And as soon as the child is being given away, they are born into that institution. That's all they know. That's their new family. That's their home. So I don't think they will know who their biological parents will be. But this is interesting.
And many notable clans amongst the Terran aristocracy have willingly given up almost entire generations of newborn sons to earn it. Such children are taken in when they are still in infancy, for the earlier the genetic metamorphosis into a warrior of the Adeptus Custodes begins, the better a chance it has of success. Huge crowds line the avenue of sacrifice outside the Ascensor's gate when such an intake occurs. They fill the air with frenzied cheering and prayer as the great and good of Terra's high society parade before them, soaking in the adoration of the masses even as they surrender their progeny forever into the Emperor's care. There is a reason that, despite their remarkable lifespan, the Adeptus Custodes have never numbered more than approximately 10,000 warriors. Simply put, for every worthy aspirant who succeeds, thousands are found wanting. The Space Marine is created by the introduction of gene seed to the body, as well as the implantation of supporting organs. Between them, these modifications reshape those who receive them into living weapons. By comparison, whatever mysterious bioalchemy is used to trigger the transformation into a custodian occurs on an entirely different level, taking root in the cells, perhaps even the soul of an aspirant. The process of ascension goes beyond the purely physical and spiritual. Those who would join the Brotherhood of the Adeptus Custodes are mentally indoctrinated. Their psyches are rebuilt from the ground up, their mental architecture fortified, as the imperial palace itself was fortified in the face of Horus's treachery, until it becomes an impregnable fastness or else collapses under its own weight. Each aspirant endures thousands of hours of psycho-indoctrination and mnemic conditioning. Their education is mercilessly absolute, information beaten into the metal of their minds at a punishing rate that drives many mad. They must grasp not only the tenets of warfare in all its forms, and learn every method of assassination, counter-espionage, threat recognition and death-dealing known to mankind, but also expand their minds in far more esoteric directions. Diplomacy and statecraft, astrogation and interstellar geography, history, philosophy, theosophy, artistry, and countless other subjects must all be mastered to a breathtakingly high degree.
Why do we need Primogs again? Really, why do we need Primogs again?
Much of this education is a throwback to the days when the custodians were expected to not only to provide the Emperor with protection, but also counsel and conversation. It has become a tradition applied by rote, but still its benefits are apparent. Not only does such an avalanche of information screen out those whose psyches are not sufficiently robust, but it further ensures that, almost alone in a dark and dreadful age, the Adeptus Custodes retain the enlightenment and perspective commonplace during the Great Crusade.
Yes, I think that's also very important, having all that information in terms of human knowledge that doesn't necessarily involve battle and war and, creating technology that's only meant for war. They have to have that kind of artistry and literature and a different side of humanity that we don't necessarily see in this Imperium of Man. I think in this age, in the 40k the 40k age of the Imperium of Man, mankind has become very stagnant. They haven't really developed their mind and soul. They are just stuck in this quagmire, And I think the Adeptus Custodes are one of the very few factions that are still capable of thinking of a better future for humanity, one that's not, in this dogma, religious dogma that's been taking control of the Imperium for so long. So yes, I think it's very, very good that the Adeptus Custodes can still think differently compared to all the other human beings in the Imperium of Man. And yeah, it's good. I like it.
Of course, with such blessings comes a tragic comprehension of the depths to which the Imperium has sunk. It is a credit to the Adeptus Custodes that such a realization does not drive them to despair. No truth is withheld from the Adeptus Custodes, for in order to do their duty without impediment, they must possess all of the facts about the dark terrors that seek to conquer the galaxy. Such sanity-eroding revelations quickly eliminate those inductees who do not have sufficient spiritual fortitude to do their duty. Those that remain can be counted upon not only to understand the deeper ramifications of the war for the Emperor's realm, but to recognize why such truths must never be allowed to spread beyond their own ranks. How long the process of creating a custodian takes is unknown beyond the walls of the Imperial Palace. All those who survive emerge as magnificent Praetorians, their sculpted physiques and altered minds so utterly other that they adopt entirely new personalities. They draw their names from ancient texts, deriving them from heroes, monsters, and gods of old Terran mythology. Not only is this practice regarded as being entirely appropriate for such transcendent beings, it also allows the noble families of Terra to save face. All can, and will, claim that it was their offspring that showed the fortitude to become a custodian, and none will gainsay them.
Okay, so the important people, the nobles who gave away their children to become custodians, they don't even know who their child is amongst them, but they're going to claim that this guy is my child. This guy is my child. I know because he walks in this particular way. So he belongs to my family, I think that's what many of them would say if they were ever crossing by custodians. But yeah, okay.
Though the minds of the custodians are armoured against the machinations of witches and psychers, they themselves never exhibit such abilities. The Emperor allowed for no chink in the defences of his custodians. For while battlefield psychers are undoubtedly powerful living weapons, they are also unstable ones. Their minds are prone to invasion by warp entities, a danger that no member of the Adeptus Custodes need ever face. For those superlative individuals that do survive to join the golden ranks, their comrades afford them immediate respect. There are no juniors amongst the Adeptus Custodes, only worthy warriors who understand the full burden of responsibility that their power and authority brings. A custodian's role of honour is encompassed by his name. Though all begin with a single epithet, as these warriors achieve great deeds, they are awarded additional names to reflect them. In days past, the Emperor himself would bestow these titles. Now it falls to the Captain General, or occasionally a shield captain in the field, to bestow the honour on his comrades. Custodians who have served for many centuries typically have dozens of names inscribed within the plates of their armour, or, in some cases, even etched microscopically into their bones. Along with their name, ascension to the ranks of the Adeptus Custodes earns each individual their own armour and weapons. Entire bloodlines of exceptionally skilled artisans dwell within gilded towers on Terra, their purpose to fashion the Auramite armour and perfectly balanced weapons for each new custodian. Certain names, such as the clan Halbrinmir or the clan Gestaxtis, are renowned for their martial masterworks, and their augmetically enhanced artisan barons are famed for the wonders they have wrought. The Adeptus Custodes also have access to an incomparable armory of technology, much of it dating back thousands of years. From the sleek Dawn Eagle jet bikes of the Virtus Praetors and the magnificent Alarus pattern Terminator armour, to Land Raiders and Contemptor dreadnoughts that saw battle during the Great Crusade, such equipment epitomizes the proven excellence of all Adeptus Custodes material.
And who maintains all of these war machines? Is it the Mechanicus, or do they have their own in-house technicians, just like how they have their own in-house armory and smith-making people? The entire bloodline of a family that is just there to make sure that they can create the armor that the custodians have and the weapons have. So I'm just wondering, in terms of their war machines, is there also an in-house family that maintains all of that technology? Yeah.
The tools of war wielded by the Emperor's guardians never fail or falter, for they are handmade by the Imperium's most skilled smiths and maintained to the most painstaking standards imaginable. Just as the warriors who protect the Golden Throne must be utterly without fault or weakness, so must the equipment they rely upon to discharge their duties. These incredible armaments, the endless training regimes that the custodians undergo, the years-long hollow conflicts through which they battle, and the shadow-shrouded wars they fight in the Emperor's name throughout the Sol system and far beyond. All these factors ensure that the 10,000 are the finest fighting force in the entire Imperium. Guardians of the Golden Throne. In the wake of the Horus Heresy, the Legio Custodes became the Adeptus Custodes. They donned mourning black, for theirs was a shame and a failing that they sought neither to forget nor to be absolved of. Yet though they met with defeat and tragedy, the custodian's vigil did not falter for even a moment. For 10,000 years, the Adeptus Custodes have stood guard over the Golden Throne. In that time, not a single enemy has gained access to the Sanctum Imperialis. The custodians have many tasks upon Terra. It is they who watch over not just the great gates that lead to the Emperor's throne room, but all of the domains of the Imperial Palace, considering the complex is a continent-sized sprawl of interconnected fortresses, cathedrals, armories, dungeons, macrohabs, judicariums, archives, sanctums, spaceports, and countless other structures. This is no mean feat. It is the Adeptus Custodes.
I'm even thinking maybe 10,000 is not enough. We need like 50,000 at least.
Custodes alone, who decide who will be permitted audience with the Emperor, and it is an honor that is granted only in the rarest of circumstances. They patrol the endless lines of petitioners that wend through the Imperial Palace, ever watchful for those of Xenos taint or heretical bent, who might have contrived to penetrate the structure's outer defenses. They oversee the soul-binding ritual that sees thousands of psychers each day drained of their life force in order to sustain the Emperor and his Astronomicon. The Adeptus Custodes guard the deepest vaults of the Imperial Palace, wherein lurk sanity-blasting secrets from the dark age of technology. They dispatch shield companies to inspect the defenses of the Sol system, and to eliminate anything that presents even the slightest hint of a threat to the sanctity of Holy Terra. They play their endless blood games, one of their own number taking the role of invader or assassin, to test their defenses, and in doing so, to strengthen them still further. For millennia, the custodians have gone about their duties, bound to traditions that have become ritual and rote. Yet even as the wider Imperium has stagnated around them, and the Emperor's servants have come to view them with a mixture of superstition and awe, the Adeptus Custodes have done what they can to fend off doubt and ennui, and have never permitted despair to take them. They barely notice the fleeting mortal men that scurry about their feet, and insist upon keeping even the most ardently loyal Space Marine at a spear's length. For what has proven fallible once may do so again. Yet this is a mantra the custodians apply also to themselves, and thus they have never permitted themselves a moment of laxity or introspection. At times, their Captain General has stood amongst the High Lords of Terra. At others, he has served as one of that council's most powerful advisors. Either way, the Adeptus Custodes continue to exercise the full authority of the Magisterium Lex Ultima, marshalling the defences of Terra as they see fit, and answering to no one but their silent master in matters of security, sanctity, and strength.
I like how Voldemort's voice went deep and powerful when he said, "They answer to no one."
The Companions. The Companions are a 300-strong force that forms the direct bodyguard of the Emperor while he sits upon the Golden Throne. They are handpicked for their duties by the Captain General, who chooses his candidates based upon painstaking assessment of each warrior's performance in training and battle, as well as their mental acuity, spiritual fortitude, and countless other indicative factors. There can be no more important duty in all of the Imperium than to shield the Emperor himself. As such, no consideration for rank or veteran status is given when appointing custodians to the Companions, and those passed over in favor of younger or less experienced candidates take no offense. The vigil of the Companions is...
They don't have that ego in them, you know? They just don't have it. It's dead. It's killed. You know, their main purpose is the protection of the Emperor, no matter what.
Unending. And though they are, of course, rotated out for brief periods of rest, it is still a purgatorial duty. Arrayed in ranks around the Golden Throne, These wardens stand for incredible lengths of time, unmoving, unspeaking, poised constantly upon the cusp of battle readiness, in case the slightest threat were to present itself. It is mentally and spiritually exhausting, even for the demigods of the Adeptus Custodes, and so when the Captain General judges that a companion has served long enough, they will be rotated out with immediate effect, replaced by a fresh inductee or to their rank. Again, this is no mark of dishonor, merely a pragmatic admission that even a custodian cannot perform such a taxing duty indefinitely. The longest any individual has stood the companion's watch was Astoran Kalos, who endured for a full century before at last surrendering his place amongst the silent ranks. Those who serve amongst the companions...
Imagine 100 years standing to attention, protecting whatever facility that's required to be protected by the custodians. An entire century.
Companions are more likely to lend their talents to the grim bodyguards, known as the Aquilan Shields. Such custodians have protected the lives of the greatest and most august personages in the Imperium, most notably the High Lords of Terra themselves. From the Master of the Navigators Guild to the High Logistica of the Adeptus Administratum, the Lord Militant of the Imperium to the Shadow Master of the Officio Assassinorum. Former companions have acted as guardians for them all. To the 10,000, such duties are simply an extension of their vows to protect the Emperor. In this case, by safeguarding those assets most important to the successful running of his Imperium. Still, it is a role that has earned the Adeptus Custodes much favor in the eyes of Terra's noble elite. A host of heroes. From outside, the organization of the 10,000 seems Byzantine. When they deign to account themselves at all to other imperial bodies, their ranks appear complex and highly stratified. Yet much of this is tradition, or else purposeful misdirection. In practice, the Adeptus Custodes use a robust and easily adaptable system to organize their forces. The Adeptus Custodes operate as a military force, a gathering of champions each of whom possesses unassailable authority over virtually any other organization in the Imperium. Conversely, no Imperial agent can give a custodian orders. Even such worthies as the High Lords of Terra and Lord Commander Gilliman are able only to request, not demand, their aid.
I love that. Request, not demand. You can request, you can ask, okay, but you cannot demand, you cannot order. I love that. Yeah. So they are the bodyguards of the High Lords of Terra and other factions like the Officio Assassinorum, commanding officers, they are their bodyguards as well, and whoever else in the what did they call it, like the Council of Terra, where all the important people gather and discuss about how to protect and how to run the Imperium. So they are the ones who protect them. Okay, that's interesting.
As befits such a body of elite warriors, the internal hierarchy of the Adeptus Custodes is remarkably flat. The Captain General commands the 10,000, inheriting a post that has passed down from one gallant leader to the next ever since the mysterious disappearance of Constantine Valdor. The Captain General has absolute authority over the Custodes, acting as the ritual proxy for the Emperor himself, and speaking with the voice of the Master of Mankind. Beneath the Captain General is the Custodian Tribunate, a group of 10 veteran custodians who act as advisors to the Captain General. Membership of this body changes periodically to ensure a blend of established wisdom and fresh ideas. A custodian must have earned at least 10 names before he can serve on the Tribunate, and have led his comrades victoriously in battle on at least 3 occasions. Once he joins the Tribunate, a custodian must serve for at least 10 years. During this time, he will not see the front lines, for he is too busy bending all of his considerable intellect to supporting, strategically and diplomatically, the Captain General. Below this ruling council are the Shield Captains, who fulfill the roles of inspiring leaders, gifted generals, and selfless champions. Their titles vary enormously, from Supreme Castellans and Aquila Commanders to Master Guardians, often born in accordance with the specific duties to which they have been assigned. It is Shield Captains that take charge of the Adeptus Custodes military engagements. One is typically afforded overall command of an operation, while several others of his rank may lend their strength and wisdom in a supporting capacity. The remainder of the custodians possess roughly equivalent status to one another, forming loose warrior bands traditionally known as sodalities. There are varying strategic roles within the organization to which some custodians find themselves better suited. However, whether this be the rapid jet-bike troops of the Virtus Praetors, the heavy assault specialists of the Alas Custodians, or the unwavering Wardens, they still operate within a meritocracy that sees them afforded whatever honor their comrades believe them worthy of. A singular force of the Adeptus Custodes is referred to as a shield company. The numbers within such a formation can vary considerably, handpicked by their shield captain for the task at hand, and ranging from a small band to a sizable army complete with jet bikes, tanks, and dreadnoughts. Under normal circumstances, a shield company includes no more than one shield captain and perhaps 30 to 40 custodians. When a larger force is required, multiple shield companies gather into forces known as shield hosts. Led by conclaves of shield captains and boasting tens, sometimes hundreds of custodians, shield hosts have the martial strength to crush enemy armies and bring entire star systems to heel. The gathering of such might is a momentous undertaking. A shield host is only assembled to accomplish those tasks that no other Imperial force could be trusted with.
Yeah, it must be really rare to have a shield host being deployed onto the battlefields, because, you know, as we all know, the custodians' main mission and prerogative is to protect the Emperor and the Imperial throne and Holy Terror. So if a shield host contingent is being deployed, it must be a very serious problem that's occurring that cannot be dealt with by any other faction in the Imperium of Man.
And its warriors march to war with a singular and implacable determination to enact the Emperor's will, the Misericordia. When an aspirant ascends to the ranks of the Adeptus Custodes, he is presented with a beautifully fashioned knife known as a Misericordia. These weapons are filigreed with gold and celdrite, their hilts molded to the owner's unique grip, and their blades imbued with micromolecular dissonator spirits that allow them to slice through the thickest armor as though it wasn't there at all. More than a lethal sidearm, the Misericordia signifies something greater. Its traditional meaning is said to date all the way back to the darkest days of Terran history, when cruel warlords ruled by the blade alone. These weapons of oppression were known as Misericordia. Yet as the Emperor led his armies of unification, his custodians are believed to have co-opted the term for their own use. No longer would the Misericordia be a symbol of tyrannical rule. Instead, it came to represent the right of the bearer to act as the arbiter of the Emperor's judgment, and to put to death those tyrants, lunatics, and demagogues who stood against him. The Misericordia still shows its wielder to be the Emperor's sanctioned executioner, yet since his fall, these blades bear a second, grimmer meaning. They have become weapons of vengeance, to be turned upon those who betrayed the Emperor and left him a broken shell. Every time a Misericordia is plunged into a traitor's heart, so it is said, a minuscule measure of revenge is exacted on behalf of the Emperor himself. Though the custodians are typically immune to such superstition, there are those amongst their ranks who harbour the hope that if enough traitor blood is spilt with these blades, it may in some way restore their master. Another school of thought, the adherents of which are known as the Misereans, believe that through the wounds inflicted with Misericordia, they will slowly bleed the great descendants of Horus, inflicting a death by 1,000 cuts upon the Black Legion and their masters. Thus, though custodians have the right to carry their misericordia or not as they see fit, it is rare indeed that they go to battle against the heretic Astartes without these blades at their hips. The Shadow Keepers, warders of the dark cells. There are terrible things locked away beneath the Emperor's palace, eldritch terrors from the depths of old night that could annihilate the Imperium. To the Shadow Keepers falls the duty of standing guard over them until the end of time. The Shadow Keepers hold the keys to the rune-locked portals hidden deep beneath the Imperial Palace. They alone know the ways by which the runic locks may be disengaged, the wards unbound, and the sanctic circles breached. They alone know these things must never happen, for the dark cells hold such horrors at bay that mankind's sanity would not survive their release. A full shield host is devoted to this grim responsibility. Over 100 custodians patrolling the dark and silent corridors, vigilantly watching over the last terrors of old night. It is a task that would soon drive most men mad, for though neither sight nor sound can escape the forbidden cells, the air of those corridors is charged with dread. A perpetual menace thickens the shadows and makes them crawl. Even the superhumans of the Adeptus Custodes are forever on edge in these dark oubliettes, for the sense of unspeakable threat never wanes. It is a testament to the discipline and spiritual fortitude of the Shadow Keepers that they stand their ground unflinchingly, sometimes for decades at a time. The ranks of this shield host include many custodian wardens, whose oaths of protection help them to focus upon the task at hand to the exclusion of all else. The leaders of these forbidden centuries carry ancient weapons of mysterious provenance, their use intended as a last resort should anything ever break free from the dark cells. For 10,000 years, the Shadow Keepers have performed their duty, yet the coming of the Great Rift changed everything. With the power of chaos spilling raw and seething into the spaces between the stars, new abominations have come to light. Worse still are the cells that stand suddenly empty, the entities and artifacts once contained within spirited away by some unholy force to curse the galaxy once more. Fearing the consequences of such dread remnants of the Age of Strife falling into the wrong hands, the Shadow Keepers at last sent warriors out into the galaxy. These jailers must trammel that which should not be, slaughtering all who seek to impede them, before returning their foul prizes to the cells where they belong. The Lock Warden.
Okay, so some Shadow Keepers are like police officers and jailers, and should any of these terrible things escape from the deep bowels of the facilities that are under the Imperial Palace, then they should head out into the galaxy, look for this creature or artifact, and return it back to Terra. Alright. Why don't they just destroy it then? Why don't they just, throw it into a star and let it get burnt, and you won't have to worry about it anymore? But if it's something that's, connected to the warp, maybe it will come back if you destroy it. Maybe it will come back, after some time. So, yeah, I guess imprisoning it in a facility for all eternity might be a good idea, I think. I don't know.
There have been many shield captains charged with mastery of the Shadow Keepers. This appointment confers the title of Lock Warden, a name that is born in perpetuity and garners solemn respect from every other member of the 10,000. The Lock Warden must be the sternest of all guardians, the most unrelenting and alert jailer on the face of Terra. Moreover, should any creature or relic escape the dark cells, or newly emerged threat need to be imprisoned therein, it is the duty of the Lock Warden to personally oversee the operation. The current incumbent of this position is Shield Captain Borsa Thirsk, who has been Loch Warden for a century and a half. He is a grim and frighteningly intense warrior, whose utter fearlessness and steely vigilance make him ideal for this role. It speaks volumes about the dire condition of the galaxy that Thirsk left Terra but twice before the breaking of the storm, yet he has barely set foot there since the great rift yawned wide. The Quillen Shield. The Gilded Guardians. Certain servants of the Emperor bear great responsibilities deemed directly relevant to the safety of Terra. Such esteemed figures are afforded the protection of the Aquilon Shield, at least until their usefulness is thought to be at its end. As the doomscryers of the Imperial Palace sift the tides of the Imperium for warnings of disaster, they also take note of those who, through example, thought or deed, are likely to avert such catastrophes before they threaten the Golden Throne. These fated individuals are honoured with the protection of the Aquilon Shield, for in this way, a small band of custodians can ensure a significant martial or spiritual asset survives to act in the Emperor's defence. The Aquilon Shield are an informal brotherhood, laced through the ranks of the ADEPTUS CUSTODES. They typically operate in small warrior bands, journeying across the stars to stand watch over their charges wherever they may be. No warning is given nor permission asked. The warriors of the Aquilon Shield appear as if from nowhere. Avatars of the
and there's nothing you can say, you know, this custodian will just pop up in front of you or behind you, and you know, you can't question them. You can't ask them, why are you here? What do you want from me? Or why are you following me? No. You just do your job and they will be behind you or in front of you or beside you, making sure that you complete your job. Yeah. It will be very awkward.
Emperor's will, who announced their quarry to be under the protection of the Master of Mankind. Such an honour is beyond compare, and is never refused, no matter the circumstances or the individual chosen. The Aquilon Shield have acted as bodyguards to High Lords, Sororitas Canonesses, Lord Inquisitors, Astra Militarum Generals, and Space Marine Captains. They have even protected 2 Crusade leaders bearing the title of War Master, staunchly ignoring the historic associations with he who first held that rank. Yet they have also appeared amidst flares of golden light to watch over firebrand frontline preachers, bewildered militia leaders, and others of apparently little import. The only unifying factor amongst them all is that, while attending their duties beneath the gimlet gaze of the Emperor's own guards, these individuals are expected to achieve incredible things in the defense of the throne world. The Aquilon Shield fight to ensure such a future comes to pass, shielding their charges from harm, until the exact moment the usefulness of the person under their protection is deemed spent.
Okay, like, the first time when Voldemort said that, right, I was a bit concerned. I was thinking maybe when the usefulness has come to an end, then, you know, killed. But I'm not sure if that's what Voldemort means. Maybe he just means, like, you know, if their duty is done, then the custodian will be like, okay, I'm done watching over you. You've completed your mission. I'm going back to Terra. And that person would just continue on with his life, you know, or her life. So yeah, I really thought maybe they meant
At that point, they depart without a word, leaving those they guarded to look to their own defense. Tragedy often follows, but this is of no concern to the Aquilon Shield, providing it does not jeopardize the safety of the Golden Throne.
So you're on your own, you know, as soon as this person leaves you behind, you're on your own. And you can just die at any moment because you don't have that protection anymore. That's heartless. Oh.
Dread Host. Instrument of the Emperor's wrath. Fear is a familiar weapon to the Imperium, used to deter enemies and keep seething populations in line. Yet there is no terror as pure and absolute as that invoked when the Emperor's own fury is unleashed to punish his foes. The Dread Host represents a breathtaking concentration of military might. It numbers hundreds of custodians, organized into multiple shield hosts, and transported aboard a trio of pre-Heresy warships known as the Morades. The nature of this army is simple. They are the deliverers of the Emperor's judgment, his anger and his punishment made manifest. Not for them the pinpoint rapid strike, the hidden war, or the measured defensive action. Instead, the assembled shield captains of the Dread Host identify the most visible and dramatic threats to the Segmentum Solar and unleash upon them such overwhelming annihilation that it sends shockwaves rolling through the warp itself. Sometimes one warship is sent, sometimes two. Only a handful of times in the entire history of the Imperium have all three of the Morades loosed their passengers against a single foe. Yet always the effect is the same. Spearheaded by dozens of Allos custodians, the Dread Host falls upon their victims with unstoppable force. They slaughter their...
But what kind of force would they be fighting against? You know, what kind of force would fight against these guys? What is it? I'm still trying to ascertain. Maybe the Tyranids. Maybe that is something that would, you know, muster the strength of the Dread Hosts to come and just completely obliterate the enemy, you know, into nothingness. Maybe the Tyranids, if they're coming closer to the what did they call it? The solar sectorum. Yeah, you know. So if there were any Tyranids coming close to that sector of space, then yes, definitely the Dread Hosts would come and eviscerate them. But I don't know anyone else who would dare challenge such a force like this.
enemies' warriors and reduce their war engines to wreckage. They cast down their false idols and set them aflame. They topple their cities, sunder their strongholds, and butcher their allies and followers. They make grisly examples of those who dare lead such a challenge to the Emperor's domain, ignoring all attempts at surrender and foiling all bids at flight. By the time the Dread Host are done with their war, nothing remains of their chosen victims but the gruesome tales of their brutal demise at the Emperor's hand.
Who would be telling these tales since everybody's dead? Like really, who would be that survivor? Because I don't think they would allow anyone to survive. I mean, there's no mercy with these guys. So maybe there would be like someone accompanying the custodians, and that person would be recording the series of events that occurred. Maybe, yeah.
The Dread Host has smashed Orc wars, obliterated rebellious star systems, and crushed traitor crusades. They have fought against enemies thousands of times their number, and humbled them through strategy, speed, and strength. With every campaign, they spread the terror of the Emperor's wrath. The breathtaking bloodshed and absolute destruction they leave in their wake has dissuaded hundreds of uprisings and invasions before they could even begin.
I always thought that, you know, the armies of the Imperium of Man don't really involve themselves in the civil wars on planets. You know, they don't involve themselves in the human politics unless if it really is something that compromises the integrity of the Imperium. You know, because I know that the Imperium encompasses millions of worlds, right, or 1 million worlds, and I'm sure like there must be like a couple thousand or maybe more that are going through turbulent times with civil wars and uprisings and stuff like that. So I always thought that, you know, the Astartes and anyone else really don't really take interest into those kind of human politics. They usually would just allow things to resolve by themselves, or maybe the Imperial God would come to the planet and pacify the planet. But I wouldn't expect, you know, least of all the Dread Hosts of the Adeptus Custodes to come there personally and bring down any kind of revolt that's occurring. So yeah, this is quite interesting.
The Sanctum of 1,000 Eyes. The stronghold of the Dread Host rises to dominate an entire district of the Imperial Palace. This armored bastion is lit with electro-braziers and arc lumen of immense size, all angled to underlight the 500 enormous eagle statues that line the sanctum's upper battlements. Each as large as a super-heavy tank, these ominous sculptures are posed in vigilant stances, many staring up into the stellar gulf, while the remaining peer down upon the thronging processionals below. Superstition runs rife that the eagles of the sanctum of 1,000 eyes can perceive disloyalty no matter where it lies, and that the Emperor looks through their avian eyes to see the darkness in men's hearts.
I'm sure there's some cameras inside those statues, but to say that the Emperor is looking through those statues, I don't know about that. Yeah, those superstitions are a bit too wild for me, yeah.
To some extent, this is true. Each eagle contains a complex array of long-range augers, servitor cogitation banks, and multispectral listening devices that feed floods of information down into the sanctum's data shrines.
Yes, okay, I understand that, alright, but Voldemort, maybe you should be more accurate when you say that a part of that superstition is quite true. Because when you said that, I was thinking maybe the Emperor does use those eyes, and he sees his imperial palace and wherever else through those statues. But no, like there's just sensors and other forms of technology that the Adeptus Custodes use for security purposes. Okay, that I understand. Yeah, not this superstition of the Emperor is looking through the eyes. No, come on.
This information is used by the Dread Host to isolate and annihilate threats to the Golden Throne. The Solar Watch, Castellans of the Blessed Worlds. The Sol system is amongst the most heavily fortified of mankind's stellar holdings. The Adeptus Custodes consider its worlds, star forts and space lanes to be extensions of their master's palace, and ensure that they are guarded accordingly. From the vast orbital fortresses of Luna to the cloud keeps of Jupiter and the deep space star forts of the Halo Belt, humanity maintains hundreds of strongholds throughout the Sol system.
Guys, 10,000 custodians is not enough. For all of this that we've gone through so far, it's not enough. 10,000, no. I think we need more. I think the custodians need more in their ranks, because 10,000 is just not enough.
Billions of weapons point menacingly into the dark gulfs of space, ready to unleash spectacular devastation upon any foolish enough to threaten mankind's seat of power. Armored towers and gargoyle-festooned bastions loom over every approach, sanctified against the foul machinations of the Emperor's many foes. Entire fleets of Imperial Navy ships prowl the space lanes, vigilant for the slightest threat. Yet perhaps the most formidable of all Terra's outer defensive measures are the custodians of the Solar Watch. Consisting of several shield companies of varying strength, the Solar Watch swear binding oaths to keep guard over the outer bastions of the throne world.
Oh, I thought the Solar Watch was mainly like a fleet of custodian vessels, and these ships are being crewed by custodians. That's why I was like, no man, we need more than 10,000 custodians. We need a lot more to maintain, the battleships and the cruisers and the corvettes and all these other forms of vessels. And then we still have bastion stations and outer solar system stations of defense, and they're also housing custodians. Yeah, like we would need more custodians to do all these jobs. So now that I'm hearing that, no, mainly it comprises of shield companies. So it's not really, it's not really custodians who are manning these positions, but they are there as like a security contingent. Yeah.
They see themselves as the first true line of defense for the Imperial Palace, and believe that it is their duty to ensure that no external threat ever makes it as far as Terra. To this end, They constantly patrol routes between the worlds and void structures of the Sol system, ever vigilant for danger. Though they typically travel via naval craft and interstellar trade ships, the Solar Watch maintain a formidable concentration of venerable land raiders, and are typically able to deploy forces that are predominantly, if not entirely, mechanized. This allows them to respond swiftly, and with overwhelming force, to any potentially threatening situation that may develop. While such dangers are not common within the Sol system, they are certainly not unheard of. The Solar Watch have been instrumental in bringing an end to demon-worshipping cults, inquisitorial coups, and subtle Xenos incursions on every world bar Mars. While their authority technically extends to the Red Planet, the Adeptus Custodes are wise enough to maintain cordial relationships with the servants of the Omnissiah, and so travel to that world only occasionally, trusting the cult Mechanicus to police its own deviance. Emissaries Imperatus, heralds of the Golden Throne. In the days of the Great Crusade, the Emperor often entrusted crucial messages or artifacts to be borne by his custodians. It is a duty they still fulfill now, speaking with the authority of the Master of Mankind himself. Though the Emperor has long been confined to the Golden Throne, there are those amongst the 10,000 who claim to hear their Master's voice during their meditations, and to feel his hand guiding them. To their comrades, there is no implication of divine intervention in this, for the Custodes have never viewed the Emperor as a god. They merely see their liege's indomitable will at work, reaching out from his shattered frame to direct his Praetorians as he did when he could still walk amongst the stars. Those who feel the Emperor's guidance the keenest become emissaries imperatus. They band together in like-minded groups, and through discussion and meditation, interpret what it is that the Master of Mankind wishes them to do. With the tacit approval of the Captain General, they bear the Emperor's words across the Imperium to commanders who must hear them, or occasionally unlock some ancient device from the palace vaults and bequeath it to whichever champion can wield it best. Their words have redirected entire crusades and seen threats intercepted and archaeotech riches won that might otherwise have passed the Emperor's servants by. For thousands of years, the emissaries imperatus have been seen abroad, but rarely in such numbers. Yet with the return of Guilliman and the commencement of the Indomitus Crusade, their activity has increased considerably. When the Primarch announced his intention to bear the secrets of the Primaris Space Marines to the Loyalist chapters, there was some resistance from the Adeptus Custodes, who feared strengthening those who might one day rebel against the Emperor once again. Yet dozens of emissaries imperatus stepped forward to intercede, stating that this was the will of the Emperor. They accompanied Guilliman's crusade, many of them taking to the air as Virtus Praetors, the quicker to deliver messages of reinforcement to the embattled Space Marines. The presence of the Adeptus Custodes also ensured that even the most traditional chapters accepted the Primaris warriors into their ranks. One does not decline a gift from the Emperor's own hand, after all. The eyes of the Emperor. Though functionally immortal, even the warriors of the Adeptus Custodes eventually tire. Some suffer physical hurts that impact upon their ability to perform their duties, with lost limbs, artificial eyes or augmetic organs lessening their physical perfection. Others find their mental faculties begin to erode, however slightly, acknowledging that their reaction times or mnemic awareness are not quite what they once were.
Okay, so they're immortal, but they still suffer the mortal afflictions of growing old. You know, you become a bit slower, you lose memory, you have memory loss, you are mentally, how should I say, weakening, you know. Like your mind is still strong, but it's not as strong as it used to be 10,000 years ago, you know.
For the vast majority of warriors, a tenth of a second reduction in the speed at which blows are struck or parried might be considered negligible. For a custodian, it is error enough to necessitate their watch come to an end. When a custodian judges himself no longer fit for duty, he surrenders all of his equipment to the Hall of Armaments and vanishes into the void of the galaxy, cladded in hooded black robes. Such noble exiles still serve the Emperor, however, for wherever they travel, they observe. Some work alone, dark and ominous figures slipping through the shadows of the Emperor's realm. Others cultivate networks of informants and agents, using fear and intimidation to secure compliance.
Guys, this is another level of bureaucracy. It's another level of military oversight and espionage and a spying organization. It's another Inquisition in all but name, if I can say that. They don't really have the kind of bravado of the Inquisition. They don't have the resources of the Inquisition, but with their talents, their strength, their intelligence, they're able to create sleeper cells and other forms of organizations that monitor and protect the Imperium. So, wow. What do we need the Inquisition for if these guys can do it better? I'm saying they can do it better because, they're custodians. Yeah. So why do we need Primarchs? Why do we need the Inquisition anymore? Because if custodians who retire can do these kind of things, why do we need them?
Where loyalty and honor will not suffice. Should they bear witness to a situation developing that they believe might threaten Terra or the Emperor, these watchers use secret channels to communicate a warning to the Captain General. So do response forces of the Adeptus Custodes launch punitive and often preemptive strikes throughout the Imperium, forewarned of dangers by the eyes of the Emperor. End quote. And thus, we can see how the Custodes are created. The Custodes were not like the Thunder Warriors, who were not like the Space Marines. Not really. The Thunder Warriors' mere existence shows the necessity of the struggle on Terra, the level of its bitterness and difficulty. For the Thunder Warriors were far mightier than their replacements, the Space Marines. They were creatures of savagery, made to fight this war alone. They were stronger, faster, more resilient and more aggressive than even the new Primaris Marines, but they were physically and mentally unstable. Butchers from the outset, in their very core. The Thunder Warriors were the rank and file to the armies of the Emperor for the Unification Wars. But ever was Eligio Custodes his greatest hammer. The master of mankind would never bleed his Custodes as he would his other forces. Where he would send company after company of Thunder Warriors, and later his Astartes, into breaches, chasms and burning pits of hell, tiring out and grinding down his foes where needed. He never did this with his Custodes. They were precious to him, in a way that only his Primarchs would become later on. Even then, few of the Primarchs could be said to be friendly, or to know their father. Not so the Custodes. For they were not just warriors. They were shining beacons of everything that humanity would become. Sterile, of course, as otherwise their very existence would threaten humanity to relegation. The Custodes are as different to the Space Marines as an artificer armor is to a flak vest, for they are not made in bulk, as are the Space Marines. They are not the recipients of mere gene seed, then trained to become weapons of war. The Custodes are the real deal, the finished product. They were trained in such ways as to be the very beating heart of the Great Crusade, and shining beacons of what it was to be human.
I still kind of wish there were more of them. Yeah.
They were the epitome of the imperial truth. Trained in art, artifice, theology, history, diplomacy, and everything else surrounding the human condition. Minds as sharp as their blades, wills as honed and impregnable as the Auramite armor they wore. Things not just bashed out in numbers, but lovingly forged into sublime perfection. and each and every item they wield or wear is as special and unique as the custodies who employs them. Now, no matter what you do today, do try to make some time for fun. Toodaloo. The custodians had moved through the ships with alacrity, but diligence. No one was spared their judgment, traitor or loyalist. They slaughtered all before them, hunting down those who broke away from the squads. Efficient, precise, and utterly without mercy. The custodians slew all. Vox hails had been issued, and open comms had been used throughout the entire ship. The chapter master requested they stand down 3 times, even implored in the last attempt, but they simply ignored him and any other calls for clemency. So the chapter master donned his helm and took his command staff out to meet the custodians. In person or in battle, it did not matter. He would confront them before the last of his men were dead. He had to try. The wait was not long, as they had made even more progress than the chapter master had thought. He barely made it out of the first section before he could hear the bark of bolt of fire and death. He strode into the next main hall with his staff at his shoulders, fanned out in a V formation. He took off his helm as he saw 3 of the huge golden auramite-bedecked demigods walk towards him. Seeing his rank, they stopped, but they did not raise or lower their weapons, just held them with the marines in their sights. The chapter master stepped forward, open-handed, and addressed them. "Emperor's chosen, warriors of the Golden Throne, why? You can see that we have fought against traitors. You can see that we are loyal sons. Why?" One of the custodians shifted his feet and spoke. "You have been ambushed, which means you have been betrayed, which means you have spies amongst your number, which means you are inept." The 2 other custodians then opened fire, expunging the command staff and the remaining marines before they could even take cover. The few shots fired back were on target, but they did not punch through the golden armor of the custodians. The leader who spoke took 3 gargantuan steps forward and engaged the chapter master. Strikes were traded, and to his credit, the chapter master blocked and parried over a dozen attacks, only to find he had been toyed with, as at the last the custodian swept in and took both of his hands off at the wrist. His sword and hands clattered to the floor as the custodian grabbed him by the neck and lifted him up. An honor, the marine supposed, as he got to spit his final words. "Why? We are the enhanced warriors of the Emperor. We are like you. Why do you hate us so?" The custodian brought the marine in closer as he stated flatly, "We are nothing alike. We custodians are the flower of humanity, warrior poets, able guardians, loyal. But you Astartes, you are broken things that have outlived your usefulness, or would have, had you not turned on your maker. To us, you are like the men of iron, tools that think themselves the masters, weapons that cut the hand that wields them. You were made to fight and to die for your race, for your emperor, and you did not do as you were supposed to do. You are beneath our contempt." And with that, the custodians tightened his grip and ended the chapter master. The replacement and Primaris gene seed for the Knights of Salamnia would be returned to Holy Terra.
We custodians are the flower of humanity, warrior poets, able guardians, loyal. But you Astartes, you are broken things that have outlived your usefulness, or would have had you not turned on your maker. To us, you are like the men of iron, tools that think themselves as masters, weapons that cut the hand that wields them. You were made to fight and to die for your race, for your emperor, and you did not do as you were supposed to do. You are beneath our contempt. And with that, the Custodes tightened his grip. I'm satisfied. I'm satisfied. I'm so every time I watch a video on the Custodians, I'm just further, pleased with myself that I chose them as my favorite faction. Every single time I get videos about the Custodians, I'm happy because I know what to expect and there would be more information on them. So yes, really, this was great. This was really great. Voldemort's Guide to Warhammer, thank you very much for this information. This video was excellent. This video was just so enjoyable from beginning to end. And definitely the Custodians, I don't think the Imperium would have survived all these 10,000 years without them. This unit, this 10,000 men of golden armor and strength and fortitude and loyalty, if they were not here any longer, like really, I think the Imperium of Man would have collapsed a long time ago, because the corruption from the bureaucracy that's hanging around the Imperium of Man, in terms of the High Lords of Terror, the Inquisition, whoever else in high positions, and then you have the Astartes also falling to betrayal and disloyalty, and then you have the Primarchs who have left and gone to other places, not really serving the Imperium anymore. Others have turned into chaos demons. These guys would be the last line of defense, and definitely they have shown themselves to be just that, the first and last line of defense for Terra and for all of humanity, I would say. So yeah, really, they are an amazing group of people that I respect in this in this fictional world. Really, the Custodians are the best. If you hate them for any reason, that's your own issue. I love them. I wish we had like content on them, like video content, like how we're being shown the Blood Angels or the Ultramarines or the Black Templars, in these other videos that people make, or videos from Warhammer Plus. We need something on the Custodians now. I need that in my life. Okay guys, yeah, that's it for today. If you like the video, please give me a like, comment and subscribe to my channel. Click on the notification bell if you want to be up to date with my latest videos, and I will see you next time. Custodians.